Most of what you spend your energy on is a complete waste of time. You don't realize how much potential you're losing simply because you don't have a system for cutting through the noise, for separating what actually moves you forward from what just keeps you busy. Without that filter, every demand looks urgent and every distraction feels important. You end up scattered, feeling like you're drowning, and can never get ahead. Fortunately, there are very practical solutions to this problem. Most people treat psychology like a box of quick fixes, tricks to feel better, to look more confident, or just, push themselves for a week. Self-improvement for the sake of feeling like you've done something. And the internet is flooded with that kind of advice. And while some of it works for a moment, it's just noise. It doesn't change the game you're playing. I do things a little differently, approaching the mind the way a strategist approaches a battlefield. Not asking, how do I feel better, but how do I position myself to win? The same mental frameworks that decide battles and close billion-dollar deals can also determine whether you stay stuck or move forward in your personal life. Strategy is a meta skill, and its principles apply everywhere, on a large-scale battlefield or in a bar fight, in business or in the bedroom. Good strategy is applied psychology, knowing your own nature and your opponent's, then having an effective system to act on it. Without that, it's just theory, trivia, and entertainment. It's like a basketball player who can shoot in an empty gym but doesn't know the rules of the game and never trains under pressure and can't function in a dynamic environment. That's self-help without strategy, and that's where journaling and cold showers get you. Self-mastery doesn't come from collecting good habits or chasing emotional highs. It comes from stripping down life to the few decisive moves that change the game and executing them with cold clarity. This isn't self-help, this is self-warfare, and most people are looking to feel better, but I want to win, and I want to help you do the same, whatever winning means to you. So let's get into it. Cut the noise. If you can't ignore what doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what you know. In June 1942, during World War II, the Pacific Theater was still up for grabs. Japan planned to ambush the U.S. Navy at Midway Island, hoping to draw American carriers into a trap. The U.S. intercepted huge amounts of Japanese radio traffic, but about 99% of that was completely irrelevant. Weather reports, unit chatter, coded messages, stuff like that they couldn't break. Analysts had to decide which messages actually matter to the upcoming battle. They suspected that AF in Japanese code meant Midway, which is the base that they were at. To confirm, they instructed Midway's garrison to send a fake, unencrypted message saying that the island's water plant had broken. A few hours later, Japanese radio chatter came through saying AF is short on water. With confirmation achieved, this single filtered detail allowed the admiral to position his ships in ambush. When the Japanese attacked, U.S. forces sank 4 of their aircraft carriers, and naval power was permanently shifted in the Pacific. The win came from discarding everything that didn't alter the decision and focusing entirely on the one piece of intel that dictated positioning. In the many battles of life, the greatest danger isn't always the enemy in front of you. It's often the flood of irrelevant noise pulling your attention in a dozen directions. Every extra thought you entertain, every detail you chase that doesn't matter right now drains the focus and speed keeping you alive. A strategist's first discipline is the ruthless ability to cut that static, to see only the moves that change the outcome and discarding everything else. That skill can mean the difference between victory and disaster, and history's most decisive wins were built on it. But this is easier said than done. So what are some of the tactics and strategies used by world-class thinkers that you can start implementing today? All of these are useful, but you don't have to use them all at once. Pick 1 to 3 that you like, and as you listen, be thinking about current problems in your life and how it might look if you applied these tactics. Up first, triage thinking. When the pressure spikes and the clock is ticking, treating every problem as equally urgent is the fastest way to lose. Not every fire is equally worth putting out. Some you extinguish now, some you let burn, and some you accept will burn out on their own. This is triage thinking, sorting problems into one of 3 categories: act now, defer, abandon. This gives you a useful framework for organizing priorities under pressure so your limited time, energy, and resources go exactly where they matter most. In the Falklands War, the British naval commanders had to defend against incoming Argentine aircraft with limited ships and anti-air missiles. Now, I am oversimplifying things a bit here for the sake of brevity, but they basically divided threats into 3 categories. Targets close enough to hit the fleet immediately, which went into the act now category of the triage thinking, those far enough away to intercept later, defer, and those already too close to stop, abandon, and focus on damage control. The enemy was attempting to overwhelm them, and it would have worked with lesser commanders without clear operating procedures. Sorting threat based off of their ability to actually respond kept them from spreading their firepower too thin and allowed them to preserve enough strength to eventually win the campaign. Under pressure, the brain's threat response system floods you with urgency signals, pushing you to react to everything at once. And now, that's a survival reflex, and it's very useful if, say, a tiger is chasing you through the woods, but it's paralyzing when threats are coming at you from every direction. In the Falklands War, that meant deciding in seconds which incoming missiles to intercept and which to let hit, which is a choice that obviously goes against every instinct that we have. Triage thinking works because it overrides that reflex with a deliberate process, forcing the mind to prioritize rationally instead of emotionally. And once you've learned to decide what to act on, the next step is knowing where to apply effort so that every action counts. Tactic 2, center of gravity. Find the one thing holding the problem together. Every force, whether it's military, political, corporate, depends on one element more than all the others. It could be a key leader, a supply line, an elite unit, or a single piece of infrastructure. Clausewitz called this the center of gravity, the point where your opponent's strength is concentrated and from which it spreads. Strike that, and you don't just weaken them, you unravel the entire system. The challenge is that it's rarely obvious, so you have to strip away the noise, resist chasing secondary targets, and identify the one blow that makes all the others unnecessary. In daily life, the center of gravity might be the one client keeping your business alive, the main obstacle blocking your promotion, the single habit driving most of your or your competitor's progress, or the root cause of tension in a relationship. Focus there and you shift the entire system. Ignore it and you'll spend your energy on symptoms while the real problem or the real opportunity goes unnoticed. In the Gulf War, U.S. planners identified Iraq's true center of gravity not as Saddam's entire army, but specifically a unit known as the Republican Guard, the elite force holding the entire regime together. Airstrikes and ground maneuvers focused on neutralizing this force first, and once that guard collapsed, the rest of the Iraqi military rapidly disintegrated, ending the war in weeks, which of course meant that we had to find a new war to fight. Psychologically speaking, we're drawn to surface-level problems because they're easier to see and they're quicker to act on. The brain rewards small wins with dopamine even if they don't matter, which keeps us busy while the deeper issue festers. So finding the center of gravity means resisting that pull and delaying the quick hit in favor of the decisive strike that changes everything. But of course, daily life can be pretty complicated, and you're going to have problems scattered across multiple dimensions. So finding the most important thing sometimes requires a little digging, and that's where the next concept could be extremely helpful. It's also my current favorite strategy. Number 3, Occam's razor. The simplest viable plan is usually the best. And guys, please don't tune out just because you've heard this before. I know you have, but it's so important. And honestly, on a personal level, every time I review this concept, I use it to solve at least one pressing issue, and then I forget about it. So this is one that I'm trying to integrate, but it's also very easy to overlook because it's deceptively simple. When time and clarity are scarce, complexity is the enemy. Occam's razor is the principle that the simplest viable plan is usually the best, not because it's elegant, but because every extra step that you throw in there is just another chance for delay, confusion, and failure. Using it means that you strip a plan down to the fewest moving parts needed to achieve the objective. This is incredibly helpful under pressure, but what you may not think about is the daily pressure you've gotten accustomed to that is distracting you and causing you to overcomplicate things. When Apollo 13 suffered an oxygen tank explosion, NASA engineers were faced with dozens of theories about how to bring the astronauts home. The winning plan ignored all the elaborate rescues and all these crazy scenarios and used the simplest viable approach, which was to power down the main module, use the lunar module as a lifeboat, and slingshot around the moon. Now, granted, slingshotting around the moon doesn't seem that simple to me, but given the context, it works. In daily life, this might mean choosing one direct conversation over a chain of hints, signals, and intermediaries. Ladies, I'm looking at you. It could be tackling the one task that makes 5 others irrelevant, or picking a straightforward business model over one that demands endless coordination, which can be a nightmare. The more moving parts you remove, the faster and cleaner your execution becomes. Psychologically, complexity feels safer because it gives you the illusion of control. The more steps and contingencies that we build, the more we hash things out, the more it seems like we've covered every angle, but in reality, that complexity overwhelms working memory, it slows the decision-making process, and it creates more potential points of failure. It's also comfortable to postpone committing to a single irreversible move. Occam's razor forces you to cut through that avoidance and face the core decision directly. And the process for implementation and adjustment is one that I remember from my time in the military, and that is called the OODA loop. OODA is an acronym that stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act, and is about making decisions in cycles, not just once. And before you even try, no, there's no new way to make fun of how silly the word sounds. Marines have already done it to death, but if you want to, feel free to drop your take in the comments and I'll give you a rating. But the faster you can cycle through those 4 steps, the harder it is for anyone to keep up. Speed matters more than perfection because each pass through the loop lets you adjust to new realities while everyone else is still reacting to the old ones. In the Korean War, U.S. pilot John Boyd became legendary for his dogfighting skills by basically cycling through the OODA loop faster than his opponents. He constantly updated his orientation mid-flight, reacting to small shifts in enemy position before they could act, and he was extremely dangerous because of it. And that speed, not just his accuracy, gave him an almost unbeatable edge. In everyday life, that means moving forward even when you don't have the full picture and then adjusting as reality unfolds. You act, adapt to the consequences, and make adjustments on the fly, spotting the change in a client's tone, the early signs of a market shift, or the changes in a room's atmosphere, and learning to pivot. The goal isn't to be perfect on the first move, because you never will be, but to stay in motion and fix the course faster than the situation can turn against you. And this was something that the military did a phenomenal job of training into me. It's also a skill that I do not see very many people able to utilize, but the ones who do tend to be the most successful. So filter for information that changes your orientation of the situation first, then be decisive and aim for speed over perfection. Not to become reckless, but to keep from getting stuck in uncertainty and overanalysis. Psychologically, people freeze because the brain craves certainty before acting. Under pressure, this creates analysis paralysis, waiting for the quote-unquote perfect decision while the situation changes and develops around you. The OODA loop works because it rewires your brain to act with incomplete information and then adapt in motion. Each cycle through the loop builds confidence that you can correct course as you go, which trains your brain to value speed and adaptability over the illusion of perfect preparation. For more on getting good at taking decisive action, check out my last video, This is Why You're Losing to Idiots. Also, let me know what you guys think of that title. I thought it was pretty funny. But deciding what data specifically to act on is where this next concept comes into place. And that is number 5, Parkinson's Law of Triviality, which teaches to resist wasting time on details that don't change the outcome. So people naturally spend the most time on the things that they understand the best, which is why groups will waste hours and hours debating minor details while critical issues go unnoticed. And if you've ever sat through a corporate meeting, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is Parkinson's Law of Triviality. For a strategist, it's a warning. The amount of attention something gets is often inversely proportional to its importance. In the 1950s, a British government committee spent more time debating the design of a staff bicycle shed than the budget for a nuclear power plant. Why? Because everyone understood bike sheds, so they weighed in on it endlessly, trying to give their opinion and trying to add value, while the complicated nuclear decision went mostly unnoticed and unexamined. Leaders who recognize this trap resist getting pulled into low-stakes debates, and they keep the attention on the decisions that truly matter. In daily life, this shows up when a team obsesses over font choices while ignoring a flawed marketing offer, or someone who wants to get in shape obsessing over the quote-unquote best training program instead of actually just going to the gym, or getting stuck trying to learn everything about the real estate industry instead of calling leads and just selling houses. You need to get good at resisting the pool of easy, comfortable debates and focus on the decisions that actually move the mission forward. Psychologically, we gravitate towards trivial decisions because they're safe and familiar. The brain prefers that certainty, as we've been talking about, so it fixates on details that we understand instead of wrestling with the high-stakes choices, which of course are the ones that carry the most risk and ambiguity. This gives us a false sense of progress while the real, uncomfortable decisions remain untouched. Over time, this habit conditions us to equate activity with achievement, even when nothing meaningful is happening. Hence our current corporate culture of unproductive busy work. So how do you cut out that busy work, you might ask? Well, point number 6, again, one that you've heard before, but let me take it from a maybe slightly different angle. The 80-20 rule. Roughly 80% of your results tend to come from 20% of your efforts. In almost every system, a small fraction of inputs creates most of the results. The numbers aren't exact, obviously, but the pattern is universal. A few things matter far more than the rest. So the advantage goes to the ones who can identify those critical few and pour everything into them instead of scattering their effort across the trivial many. In the early 2000s, Amazon analyzed its sales and found that a small fraction of products generated the majority of revenue. By prioritizing those high volume items in the warehouse and algorithm recommendations, logistical processes, they boosted profits so much faster than if they had tried to optimize the entire catalog equally. Day to day, that might mean focusing on the small handful of customers who generate the most of your revenue, the two or three habits that are driving most of your health and energy, or the couple of conversations that decide the direction of a project. Most people dilute themselves by chasing after that other 80%, but the smart person concentrates force where the payoff is disproportionate. Psychologically, that 80% is seductive because, again, it's easier and it offers a quick, low-stake win. The brain craves that steady drip of dopamine, even if the rewards are meaningless and usually just emotional. Focusing on that critical 20% demands discomfort. It forces you to tackle the work with the highest pressure and the highest consequences. And if you've ever set foot in a corporate meeting, you know how easy it is. I keep coming back to that, but you know how easy it is for people to waste every minute of that meeting talking about things that don't matter. And another useful framework for cutting through all of that junk and all that garbage, all that noise is number 7, first principles. First principles thinking is the discipline of stripping the problem down to its most basic truths and rebuilding from there. Instead of reasoning by analogy, which is doing things a certain way because that's how we've always done it, and just assuming that it's the right way. Instead, you break it apart to the physics, the raw facts, the unchangeable realities. And this clears away assumptions, traditions, and inherited limits that slow progress. Now, of course, some of those things may be there for a reason. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you build a car. I'm not saying to just throw all progress out the window every day just because, that's just how, that's the old way of doing things. But when you're stuck, you may need to think a little bit for yourself. When SpaceX was starting, Elon Musk asked suppliers for quotes on rocket parts and found them astronomically expensive. Get it? Astronomically, because, it's a rocket ship. Anyway, instead of accepting the industry's pricing, he broke rockets down into the raw materials like aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber, stuff like that, and calculated the actual cost of building them himself from scratch. And using that first principles approach allowed SpaceX to design rockets dramatically cheaper than their competitors. Day to day, that might mean questioning why a process needs 3 approvals, or why you think that you're supposed to flirt a certain way, why your pricing matches competitors, and so on and so forth. Ask yourself what's actually true here and build from that. You may have to dig a little bit, and that's okay. You could end up finding faster, cheaper, and more efficient ways that no one else saw before. And psychologically, we tend to default to imitation because it's just easier on the brain. Following existing models does save us a lot from the cognitive strain of rethinking a problem from scratch. And again, that can be useful most of the time, but this reliance on precedents also locks us into other people's limitations and mistakes. First principles thinking forces the mind out of those mental ruts, breaking familiar patterns so that you can see the problem without inherited assumptions. It's uncomfortable at first because thinking is hard, but I believe in you. And that discomfort is exactly what makes it powerful. If nothing else, you'll understand the pre-existing systems better and you'll get some practice using your gray matter. So guys, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing, drop me a like, drop some comments down below. If you're listening on Spotify, it would really help me out a lot. If you would also just follow me on YouTube. You don't have to watch the videos if that's not what you want to do, but just any kind of boost that I can get with the algorithm would help me out a lot. Thank you. I appreciate you. Reach out if you have any questions, and I will see you soon.